What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be continuing the How Good Is Your Overwatch League Team series by taking a look at the Florida Mayhem. In this video, I'll be evaluating the Mayhem's talent so I can make a prediction as to where I think they'll finish in the Overwatch League Season 2 overall standings. But first, before we talk about any of the players or anything, I like to start these types of videos off by talking a little bit about the head coach. So we'll start off there, and then after that, we'll talk about the players. The Florida Mayhem are being coached by Mineral, who was also the head coach of the team last season. Before coming to the Mayhem, Mineral was a coach and a former player on the popular European team known as Misfits. Mineral isn't considered to be the best coach out there, especially when you consider the 7-33 record that the team finished with last season, but is he a bad coach? I don't think that's necessarily the case. He had plenty of success coaching Misfits back in the day after all. His team came in second place in Overwatch Contenders Europe Season 1. Plus, there are plenty of other problems that made his life as a coach far more difficult than it should have been. For starters, he was the only coach on the team for the first stage of the season. He also only had 6 players to work with for pretty much all of Stage 1. It also helps that Mineral would eventually have to step down from the team temporarily due to some health issues that he needed to tend to. There were also some internal issues within the organization here and there that did not make things any better for him, and overall, I'd say Mineral is an average coach. He's nothing special, but I wouldn't say that he's horrible either. That's enough about the Mayhem's coach though. Let's evaluate the players on their team now. At main tank, the Mayhem seem to be sticking with Awesome Guy, who now goes by the handle SNT. I personally have never been the biggest fan of Awesome Guy. He did nothing to impress during Season 1, but I don't think that means it's time to give up on him yet. The Mayhem were a disaster last year, let's face it. And now, he has a chance to play with primarily Korean teammates, which is going to help him be more in his comfort zone. He pretty much no longer has to worry about speaking English in-game, which means that communication is going to be so much easier. Even if he was decent with his English, this change is definitely going to help him out. Although I think there is some hope for him still, it doesn't change the fact that he's considered by most to be a bottom tier main tank in the league. Also on main tank is Swone, and he played on NRG Esports last year. He also played for Kangdu Panthera in 2016 and early 2017. While I don't know much about him, Swone seems like a capable player. During his time with NRG last year, the team finished in the top 4 of Overwatch Contenders Season 2 America. I can see him getting playtime this season for sure. The Mayhem can use any help they can get, and now is the time for Swone to step up. Moving on to off-tank, the Mayhem have Zephyr. He comes from Seoul Dynasty, where he was a backup for Zumba. Zephyr did get some playtime here and there during Season 1, but he never did much to impress anybody. This is a position I think the Mayhem could have done a better job of upgrading. I don't consider Zephyr to be a bad player or anything like that, but he's no better than average at best in my opinion. Up next at main support is Chris. Chris comes from the Contenders Korea team known as Meta Athena. He was with the team ever since 2016, which means that both Saya Player and Awesome Guy were his teammates in the past. This will without a doubt benefit the Mayhem chemistry-wise, since the 3 of them have had previous synergy with one another. I see Chris as an upgrade to the Mayhem's backline compared to last season. At flex support, Florida acquired Hagopen, who previously played on the London Spitfire in Overwatch League Season 1. He also played on the Mayhem's Academy team after being released by London. Like with Chris, I see Hagopen as an upgrade at this position. He played fairly well in a few games for the Spitfire, so I have high hopes for him. Hagopen is a solid Zenyatta player and has even shown the ability to play some DPS if needed. And those are actually the only 2 support players the Mayhem have, so moving on to DPS, we first have to bring up Saya Player. This guy is a superstar level hitscan player whose skills rival the likes of Carpe and Pine. He was one of the only bright spots on his team last year, and I personally think he will be the best player on the Mayhem in Season 2. This guy has the potential to be one of the best DPS players in the league. As good as Saya was in Season 1, no amount of hard carrying seemed to help him get his team a lot of wins, unfortunately. Hopefully that changes in Season 2 though. Saya Player is definitely a player worth watching in Overwatch League Season 2, and I personally am very much looking forward to seeing how much he grows as a player. Also on DPS is Apply, who played on the Florida Mayhem's Academy team last year. Apply is one of the only non-Korean players on the roster, so it's hard to say how much he'll be able to fit in with his other teammates. Another thing worth noting about him is that Apply is on a two-way contract, which means that we probably won't see much of him in this upcoming season, and Apply is known for his ability to play the projectile role if any of you were curious. Up next is BQB, and he comes from X6 Gaming, and I'd like to add that he was part of the X6 Gaming team which won Overwatch Contenders Korea Season 1. BQB is mostly known for his Tracer and Sombra play. BQB clearly has the skill and experience needed to help out a team like the Florida Mayhem, but the question is, will it be enough? And lastly, to round out the DPS rotation, Florida still has Tavik, and kind of like with Apply, I don't quite understand why Tavik is on the roster. Don't get me wrong, I'm very happy for Tavik. I like him as a player a lot, and it's good to still see him around in the professional scene. But at the end of the day, he's one of two players on this 9-man roster who does not know how to speak Korean. I personally think it would have been a better idea for the Mayhem to just have all Korean players on the team so that everyone has an easier time communicating with one another. Tavik and Apply make it much harder for their Korean teammates to communicate in-game since English is just a secondary language for them. It also helps that Tavik is kind of washed up at this point in his career, and it's quite clear that he's just not the same player that he once was. One thing that I do like about Tavik, however, is his ability to play almost all of the DPS heroes. He's a very flexible player, and I kind of see him as a Swedish version of Prophet, but not nearly as good, obviously. And that covers all of the players on the Florida Mayhem as of right now. I believe that the Mayhem made some decent upgrades during the offseason. They released a bunch of players who underperformed in the previous season, and I'm especially happy with the actions they made at support. Zupe and Zebosai were the second worst support line in the league last season in my opinion, with only the Shanghai Dragons trailing behind them. Hagopen and Chris make the support line for this team appear a lot less weak. They also added some needed depth at DPS and main tank. But even with these moves, I don't have much confidence in this team. Sure, they made some good roster improvements, but they aren't nearly good enough. All of the players they acquired are average or are just slightly above average at best. The only star player they have is Saya Player, and just having him is not going to be enough. The Florida Mayhem failed to surround their star player with high-end talent, and I think they'll most likely pay the price for it by having yet another bad season. And that's why I predict the Florida Mayhem will finish anywhere from 20th to 17th place this season. This team is easily one of the worst in the entire league, and I just don't think they have the talent needed to compete with any of the good teams. It's unfortunate that Florida's current ceiling is not very high. I hope they can prove me wrong. And there you go. That's how good I think the Florida Mayhem will be in Overwatch League Season 2. If you enjoyed this content, then make sure to hit that like button, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing so you can stay up to date with the How Good Is Your Overwatch League Team series. I plan on doing a video for every team. I still have 15 more to go, so stay tuned. Also, feel free to let me know what you think of the Florida Mayhem down in the comment section. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.